All right, the recording has started. That is online. Tim Duffy is the Chief Executive Officer of DX Engineering. I think we're all familiar with DX Engineering as a fantastic supplier in the amateur community. Tim was first licensed in 1972 and is very active on the HF bands. If you've ever been in a contest, you've probably seen the call sign K3LR. He enjoys hosting multi DX radio contest events and likes to bring new people into the hobby by mentoring them in the fun of amateur radio. Tim is the president of his local ham club, the Mercer County Amateur Radio Club. He's active in RACES, ACS, and ARES. He's a member of the CQ Contest Hall of Fame and was on Team USA for the World Radio Team Championship 5 times. Tim is also the founder and chairman of Contest University, if you've ever seen that advertised as part of the Dayton Hamvention Week. He's chairman of the Worldwide Radio Operators Foundation and is a graduate of Penn State. Tim is also the recipient of the 2015 Amateur of the Year Award, presented by the Dayton Hamvention Awards Committee, and the 2016 YASME Excellence Award, amongst other awards in the amateur service. Tonight, Tim will deliver a presentation for us on the topic of grounding and bonding. And please join me in welcoming Tim Duffy, K3LR. Tim?
Thanks very much, Paul. And thank you so much for the kind invitation to talk to the club tonight. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started with the presentation. Let's talk about grounding and bonding. And we're going to talk about some techniques and understand the difference between grounding and bonding, and we're going to appreciate the the different requirements for AC safety, lightning protection, RF, and audio. And I'm going to give you some also some other resources to if you want to take a deep dive into this. And so what I used for this presentation was the ARRL handbook, the ARRL antenna book, also the book that Ward Silver, N0AX, wrote, Grounding and Bonding for the Radio Amateur, is a really, really good book. And if you don't have it already, you might consider getting it. There's also some great online free resources, such as the Motorola R56 Standards and Guidelines for Communication Sites, and also K9YC.com has got a ton of information on grounding and bonding. So there is no such thing as RF ground, and single point ground. We're gonna talk about the single point ground panel a lot tonight. Also, you know, when we're thinking about bonding, we want to make sure that we're keeping our connections at the same voltage potential, and that's what bonding is meant to do. It's not expensive, it's not hard, but it does require the right materials and hardware. And the great news is it works in favor for AC safety, lightning protection, and RF management. But for bonding to work, it has to be low impedance, short lengths, and heavy enough to carry the expected current, and sturdy enough to survive the environment. So inside your station, you can use tin copper braid, but not braid from old coax, because braid from old coax is exposed copper and it will deteriorate very fast. And you can't even use flat weave braid outside. You need to make sure that you're using strap or very heavy conductors such as number 2. And I'm going to show you some of that as well. AC safety is very important, and we want to make sure that we have safety first. And I like to hire a professional electrician. I'm an engineer, but I don't do it every day. A professional electrician to make sure that your AC power is connected properly to ground and wired correctly is very, very important, both from the safety of your house, safety of your shack. And so AC safety grounding has several names: green wire ground, third wire ground, equipment ground, but it has 2 purposes. and that is to stabilize the AC power voltage during faults, and it also provides a path to an AC common point fault when currents such as lightning, etc., occur. So it's very, very important. And so here's how the wiring in our house works. Outside, there's a utility transformer that takes the high voltage down to 240 volts, and it's got a center tap on it with a ground connection right at the transformer. So outside, you'll see a connection to ground, and it is good to inspect that periodically too, because sometimes that can be disconnected for various reasons. And then you have 3 wires that comes into the house: the 2 hot wires, which is 240 volts, and the neutral wire, and that goes to the neutral bus. And then there's also a ground bus, which has another ground rod connected to it, and that is also connected to the breaker box itself. And notice the main bonding jumper here. That it only occurs in the main breaker panel. If you have any sub panels, and I have 5 sub panels here at K3LR, there is not a bonding jumper between ground and neutral. So the only place that ground and neutral come together is in the main breaker panel. So here are the connections going to the main breaker panel. You can use these acorn clamps. However, I like to use these exothermic welds. This is known as a CAD weld, one shot, available at DX Engineering. And this welds the number 2 wire right to the top of the ground rod. So it's very, very good. You want to make sure that you bond all of your earth connections together. You don't want anything to be independent, which would develop unequal voltage. You can't steer lightning, but let's help it make good decisions. You want to keep lightning outside of your house. So heavy, low impedance paths to the earth are very important, and we want these outside of your house, and we don't want lightning to go inside your house. So here's how you can invite lightning in your house, and you don't want to do that. Notice the tower here doesn't have a ground rod. That's bad. Notice this ground rod is connected to the outside shields of the coax coming in, but it is not hooked to the AC service entry ground. That's bad news as well. This is how you want to do it. You want to make sure that your tower has a good direct ground, and then all these ground rods are hooked together. And this keeps lightning outside of your house. Good practice tower grounding: ground rods, radials, ground ring around the tower. And then you want to bond your feed lines to the tower. This is a clamp that we make at DX Engineering, and it makes it very easy to keep the shields right on the tower leg. And also you can use spark gaps across insulators if you have vertical antennas. Using an RF ground plane. That's something that I do here at K3LR, and it is explained in the grounding and bonding book, but this equalizes voltage, and it also connect that to the single point ground panel. Everything is connected together, along with lightning protection. So these are gas discharge tubes for rotor cables, coax, and AC. Single point ground panel. This is an aluminum plate. You can see all the coaxes coming in from the antennas, the lightning protectors here on the coax, and then the connection to the ground rod. And also gas discharge tubes here for the antenna switch, making sure that we keep all of the control lines so that they cannot exceed 82 volts. More single point ground panel, keeping everything at the same voltage potential. And everything must have a common or bonded ground connection. And we want to bond the equipment in the station. So here's how we do it. Here's an RF bonding bus. Every piece of equipment is connected. You can see all the connections using tin copper braid. Remember that everything in your station is an antenna, even things that you don't want to be an antenna. Certainly inside the station, you want to make sure that everything is connected to the single point ground panel. And that is connected to the ground rod and also your AC safety ground. So don't worry about RF ground. We're going to concentrate on bonding. That eliminates hot spots. It reduces RFI, reduces sensitivity to how you put your equipment together, and it minimizes any audio buzz and hum. You want to keep cables short, use the bonding bus, and minimize the loop area. So here's the RF ground plane underneath the radio, and this helps equalize voltage. You run the cables along the ground plane, and you bond the ground plane to the station ground system. Remember that all currents flow on all wires, but a single solid ground system made of short, heavy direct connections satisfies all the requirements for AC safety, lightning protection, and RF management. Again, making sure that all the ground rods are connected together and the single point ground panel is connected to the RF bonding bus. AC power panel connected to the service entrance ground. Another shot at this with the main panel, neutral bus, ground bus, AC service electrode, single point earth electrode, the bonding bus, everything connected together. So there's great resources online from the National Fire Protection Association, also Polyphaser, and the FAA, the IEEE, and the ARL has a great information source for electrical safety, grounding, lightning protection, as well as WHAI's website. Remember this, the RF ground plane. Run the cables along the ground plane, bond to the station ground system. And here at K3LR, use these copper plates as the RF ground plane underneath each radio and every amplifier. And then this is the RF bonding bus that connects down to the ground system here at K3LR, which is right underneath. Silver soldered 2-inch strap, low impedance, good brass connections, the tin copper braid, 1-inch wide, one going to the radio, one going to the amplifier for each station. The RF ground plane connection going off to the bonding bus, and then here connection to the radio. Want to make sure we use shielded cables and also short straps for our RF bonding bus. Another shot of the RF ground plane, connection to the radio, and radio on top of the RF ground plane. And you can see the ground plane underneath the 2 ICOM radios here. Another shot of the RF bonding bus. This bus is available at DX. And then connection from the radio to the RF ground plane, from the RF ground plane to the bonding bus. Amplifier connections using the 1-inch wide tin copper braid. Another example, amplifier connecting to the RF ground plane. And that is my presentation, and I will stop sharing and hopefully get back to the screen there, Paul. And any questions?
Outstanding. Thanks, Tim. Open it up for any questions. Klaus, it looks like you're up.
Yeah, you were mentioning several times the RF ground plane, the metal piece that you put on the radio equipment. So the radio equipment itself is in a metal case. So can you explain the reason why we need another metal plate underneath it? And the metal case just couldn't handle whatever it does?
Yeah, that's a great question, Klaus. The whole premise of the RF ground plane is explained in this book from Ward Silver, Grounding and Bonding. And the idea is to keep the voltage potential at the same level throughout all. And the capacitive effect of the case of the radio to the RF ground plane is very, very important. And I've seen that, you know, a reduction in issues of locations of equipment by using the RF ground plane. So, but for further study, this book is just tremendous.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Tim? Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Tim. Thanks for the very nice presentation. I'm Bill, K0KT. You mentioned the gas discharge tubes. Do they eventually fail? And if they fail, in what way do they fail? And how do you know that they failed?
Well, that is a great question, Bill. And, you know, the only way to know is if they actually, you know, blow up. Otherwise, you don't know if they have failed. But I can tell you that in the instances of, you know, installing those gas discharge tubes, it's very beneficial to replace them periodically. So that's the only, other than if they blow up.
Right, so they can fail open and you never know it, is what you're saying, and therefore you have to replace them.
That is true.
So when you say periodically, how often would you recommend?
Well, if you think you had a lightning event, I would replace them.
Okay, good. No way to test them?
The only way to test them is to put them under a voltage, you know.
Like a high pot thing? Yeah,
I mean, 82 volts is what we use in our devices. So, I mean, if they survive that, then they're okay. But that's a good point, Bill. And I would just periodically replace them.
Okay, thanks.
Skip, you're next.
Okay, now we're unmuted. Tim, 3 or 4 or 5 slides ago, I saw going into either a ground point or the back of a radio what appeared to be a twin lead, either AC twin lead or speaker wire. And I was guessing that they had the conductors in parallel. And can you use a multi-wire cable with the conductors in parallel to increase the capacity of some wires used to bond things or ground things?
Yes. Yes, you can.
Good, because I already do a little bit of that because the wire was on hand.
That's right.
But thank you.
Okay, Skip.
Other questions for Tim? All right, seeing none, Tim, thank you so much for your valuable time, and appreciate the resource and the information shared here. I think that grounding and bonding is something that's kind of a black art, and the more that we can learn about it, the better. And it's great to see some real world examples of things that work in a very demanding RF environment such as K3LR there. So
thank you so much, Paul, and thank you to the club members, and to those of you who are DX Engineering customers. Thank you so much for your business and your trust in my company, but also to those of you who are not DX Engineering customers, give us a shot, give us a try. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how well it goes. And we have over 600 years of experience on our team. So we're very proud of that. And Paul, thanks again for having me.
No, absolutely. Thanks. And Jason, thanks for setting this up here. I do see that you've got your hand up. Anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, I did think of one question, and often, here in the Midwest, we get these thunderstorms, and a lot of times we hear recommendations to disconnect equipment if there's, a thunderstorm that's going to be approaching, or if you're not going to use it for a long time. With all of the grounding, bonding, and all of that, is that still necessary? Is it still recommended to do that kind of disconnecting of equipment?
Absolutely. That's what I do.
So do you have a easy way to do that in your station? And you have a lot of equipment and it's all bolted to everything. Is there a kind of a centralized way you can do that conveniently, or do you have to go around and unplug everything?
I have to go around and unplug everything. There's no easy way to do it.
I was hoping for a shortcut. Darn it.
Sorry, it's no free lunch.
Aren't we all, Jason? Aren't we all? So fantastic. Well, thanks again, Tim. I greatly appreciate your presentation and your generosity with your time. So
thanks again, Paul, Jason, and everybody. 73 from K3LR and DX Engineering.
7-3, Tim.
Thanks. 7-3s.